They give instructions to come out to the road.
But you are before the
Why? Why are you here? It's a voluntary effort. I come in support.
The Honorable President.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we willingly acknowledge you as the supreme being, most gracious and most merciful. Look down, we beseech you, on us who are members of this Senate, and deign to assist us in the duties that we have to perform on behalf of our beloved country of Trinidad and Tobago. Open our eyes to see the truth, and help us to accept it with all its implications into our lives. Direct us, O Lord, in our deliberations, so that setting aside private interests, unwholesome prejudices, and personal affections, we may treat all matters set before us with honesty, courage, and conviction. Through all we say and do in this Senate, may we give glory and honor to your holy name, inspire confidence in our fellow citizens, and make a positive contribution to the peace and prosperity of our nation. Amen.
Announcements by the President.
Honourable Senators, I have granted leave of absence to Senator the Honourable Alison West, who is out of the country. Honourable Senators, I have received the following correspondence from Her Excellency the President, Paula May Weeks. The Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago by Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. To Ms. Ayana Lieber-Lewis. Whereas Senator the Honourable Alison West is incapable of performing her duties as a senator by reason of absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Paula May Weeks, President as aforesaid, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Ayana Lieber-Lewis, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 26th of April 2018 and continuing during the absence out of the country of Senator the Honourable Alison West, given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the office of the President St. Anne's this 26th day of April 2018. Honourable Senators, a senator is required to take the oath.
I, Ayana Lewis, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I'm about to enter.
Papers.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers as listed on the order paper in the name of the Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. A green paper on the National Policy on Gender and Development. And finally, a report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Superior Regional Corporation for the year ended September 30th, 2013.
Urgent questions.
Senator Mark.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. To the Honorable Minister of Rural Development and Local Government. In light of the decision to close the Charlotte Street Heritage Route Market, can the Minister inform the Senate of the action the government intends to take to address the concerns of the vendors?
Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I thank the Honourable Member for his question. And Madam President, I have been assured by the Mayor of Port of Spain that the Council intends to engage in consultation with the Charlotte Street Heritage Route market vendors to ensure that their concerns are heard and resolved. Madam President, we recognize the importance of these vendors, and the Ministry has requested a full written report from the city on this entire issue. The government has always been concerned about those in our society who are in need of opportunity. And Madam President, I am personally committed to consulting with these vendors and find an amicable solution to this vexing problem. If the city is to continue developing as an inclusive space, it is important that we consider all the ways to ensure that persons of all backgrounds are successful and can participate in its growth. Thank you.
Madam President, through you, can the Honourable Minister inform this House why did the Council of the City of Port of Spain took a unilateral decision without any consultations with the vendor to shut down this heritage market?
Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, as I don't know if I could quote, I'm not so well acquainted with the House, but the newspaper report from the Mayor of Port of Spain said this morning he did not consult with the vendors. So I took it upon myself to call him and have a dialogue with him, and he assured me that he will consult with them, and I am going to take a personal interest in doing so.
Senator Ma.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, is the Minister aware that the vendors are so aggrieved by this decision of the Council that they may be contemplating legal action against the corporation? So angry are they on the action taken by the Council? Are you aware of this development?
Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
Madam President. Madam President, I understand exactly what Senator Mark is saying, because in my previous role, held as the Mayor of San Fernando, I interacted with vendors for 3 years. And I had absolutely no problems, running problems with them. And I understand, Senator Mark, what you are saying, and I want to give you the assurance again that I will consult with, I will meet with them at the earliest convenience, very early I should say, because I understand the plight of these people. Very important people in our society.
Senator Richards, next question.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, everyone. To the Minister of Health, can the Minister indicate what measures will be taken to address the issue of mixing components from different manufacturers for orthopedic surgeries?
Acting Minister of Health.
Madam President, an audit has been launched into all implants done at the Port of Spain General Hospital from January 2017 to date, with a timeline of 1 week for a preliminary report. This is to ensure that correct devices were used in compliance with international regulatory standards. All companies who are direct suppliers to the Regional Health Authority have been requested to provide the list of the companies that they receive their orthopedic supplies from and to provide the proof of verification that must meet international regulatory standards. Only pre-qualified companies meeting this requirement will be engaged. At the hospital level, at the time of receipt of the orthopedic supply at the operating theater, the implant supplied will be checked against the purchase order request provided to the supplier and signed off as received by 1, the representative of the supplier, and 2, the sister in charge of the operating theater. In addition, prior to the patient being brought to the operating theater, the surgeon will check the implant supplied against the original purchase order with the operating theater manager to ensure specifications are met. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Richards.
Thank you, Minister, for that comprehensive answer. Can the Minister indicate if it is prudent at this time to put holds on surgeries while the audit is being conducted to ensure that lives are not put at threat if there is a compromise in terms of the standards being met medically?
Minister.
Madam President, the ministry is being very prudent, having recognized that there was an issue. The strategies I identified here are currently being implemented so that the checks will be done to ensure that there is compliance and that the implants meet regulatory standards.
Thank you again, Minister. Thank you, Madam President. Through you, will the ministry be doing a more extensive audit to see if there were breaches prior to the week that you outlined in your initial answer, to see if anyone's life may have been put at risk even before that week where the audit is being conducted for surgeries that may have been completed before that time?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, the hospital has been and will continue to monitor the situation to ensure that this doesn't reoccur. Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, the government is pleased to announce it will be answering all questions on the order paper, save and except question number 119 and number 125, in which we asked for a 2-week deferral. 119 and 125. All others will be answered.
Questions 119 and 125 are deferred for 2 weeks. Senator Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. Question number 64 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. I have in my possession an updated report from Dun & Bradstreet on a company by the name of Sealease Limited, which is the company that sold the Galleon's Passage to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The Dun & Bradstreet report confirms the government's own research that this is a reputable company with no adverse issues. The address and the directors and shareholders of the company are as we know them to be. The chief executive is Mr. Stuart Ballantyne. The parent company is Sea Management Corporation Services of Australia. And to read some of the elements of the report, nothing detrimental has been found against the company in the Hong Kong District Court, High Court, or Gazette files. No record found against the company in the Small Claims Tribunal files. That's it.
Senator Mark.
Madam President, can the Minister indicate whether those are the critical or key elements that comprised the Dun and Bradstreet report?
Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Senator Mark.
Can I ask the Honourable Minister on behalf of the opposition when he will be tabling formally a copy of that entire report for the public consumption?
Minister of Finance.
That will be subject to Cabinet approval.
Madam President, may I ask the Honourable Minister whether Sea Management Services Company Limited, of which Sea Lease is a subsidiary, is also the same company in which Ocean Design and Survey, the valuator of the said boat that we have called Galleon Passage, is also a subsidiary of Sea Management Services Company of Australia.
Minister of Finance.
Madam President, I'm not aware of that.
Madam President, if the minister becomes aware of that, would the minister be prepared to scrap that whole valuation exercise and begin an entirely new exercise? Because there's a clear conflict of interest.
Senator Mark, one question, please, and succinctly to the minister.
Could I ask the Honourable Minister, if he becomes aware, I bring evidence to show that this company is in fact a subsidiary of the Sea Management Services Company of Australia, whether his government would be prepared to scrap that entire valuation exercise?
Minister of Finance.
Madam President, again, we seem to have memory problems. We have a valuation from Schulte Marine at $35 million US, and Schulte Marine has no relationship whatsoever with the seller of the vessel.
That's it.
Okay.
Next question.
Who's in them?
Next question. Next question, Senator Mark.
Question number 74 to the Acting Minister of Health.
Acting Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, an annual sum of $1.5 million was approved for the Cancer Society in the fiscal year 2018 for a period of 3 years with payment effective from January 1st, 2018. To date, a sum of $750,000 was paid to the Society, representing 2 quarters, that is for the period January 1st to June 30th, 2018. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Madam President, Honourable Minister, could you indicate whether there was a challenge in meeting the subventions normally made to this particular non-governmental institution over the last 3 years?
Minister.
Madam President, there was no challenge in meeting the subvention to the Cancer Society. What happened is there are some requirements that must be met before we can continue with the subventions. For example, the quarterly and annual reports must be submitted, audited financial statements must also be submitted, and the organization is normally required to submit a proposal with a budget. This was not submitted by the Cancer Society during 2016-2017. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Can the Honourable Minister indicate that to this House whether everything has been done by the Ministry of Health to ensure that there are no further disruption to the allocation of funds to the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society?
Senator Mark, that question doesn't arise. Next question.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah. Next question, Senator Hussain.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Question number 92 to the Minister of Tourism.
Minister of Tourism.
Madam President, may I indicate that I'm answering this question as it is in the portfolio of the Ministry of Planning and Development. The Institute of Marine Affairs, in conjunction with the Global Environmental Facility Small Grant Program, has developed a draft National Sargassum Response Plan after multi-stakeholder meetings held in October 2015. The draft plan outlines a suite of potential management actions and synchronized approach to addressing the sargassum incursion. The objectives and components of the plan include the development and implementation of an early warning system communication strategy, as well as coordinated cleanup efforts and emergency response teams, research and monitoring. Certain actions have already been implemented consistent with the plan, such as the establishment of a local sargassum network. Once information, including satellite imagery, is shared on the regional sargassum network through the specially protected areas and wildlife regional activity center, which is the United Nations Environmental Program, Caribbean Environmental Program, Project Sargassum, Management and Impact Regional Center. The information is disseminated through the local network to initiate necessary action. The Tobago House of Assembly, through the Tobago Emergency Management Authority and the former Department of Natural Resources and the Environment, have developed their response plan and have identified sites for storage or disposal in the East, Central, and Southwest Tobago. These centers are located in the Goldsboro Estate, the Corland Estate, and the Friendship Estate. The Sangre Grande Regional Corporation, with technical assistance from the IMA, also conducted an assessment on potential storage and disposal sites within the corporation, and the site deemed most suitable is located 50 meters off the Calera Road. Research is also being conducted by the University of the West Indies and the University of Trinidad and Tobago to determine commercial uses of the seaweed, such as conversion into manure, fertilizers, fungicides, and fish food. The IMA has also prepared and disseminated public education and awareness material on sargassum. Thank you, Madam President.
In response to the answer given by the Minister with respect to the sargassum plan, there are reports that currently the beaches on Mayaro, there are a lot of sargassum seaweed there right now. Is the plan currently in effect to deal with the sargassum that is on the beach right now?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Yes, it is, Madam President.
Senator.
Is the Minister aware that the amount of sargassum that are on the beaches right now are actually affecting the fishermen from actually going out to fish because of their nets and the boats from actually traversing through the sea?
Minister.
Madam President, that has been occurring, and it has also been affecting the turtle nesting sites. And what we have been doing is cleaning up as quickly as possible. But, Madam President, you will recognize that sargassum is a very invasive seaweed. And as soon as we are aware that there is a problem, the cleanup has been taking place.
Senator.
Madam President, is the government going to implement or offer any relief to those fishermen who are actually affected by the sargassum seaweed?
Senator Hussain, that question doesn't arise.
Madam President, I have one more question.
Yes.
With respect to the answer given by the Minister, where research is actually being conducted by the UWI to convert the sargassum into manure and fish food, how soon would this actually occur where the seaweed can actually be transferred to manure and fish food? Converted.
The research is ongoing, Madam President.
Next question, Senator Mark.
Question number 97 to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam President, there were 3 consultations on the housing development project proposed for QREP, including one held yesterday, 25th April 2018. The Housing Development Corporation of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries have taken note of the issues raised and are working with all stakeholders involved. The issues include potential flooding, traffic, and issues relating to the preservation of unique germplasm. The flooding issue was addressed by the Ministry of Works and Transport at a Valuation meeting. Traffic issues are being addressed by the Highways Division and Traffic Management Branch. School places is a matter being addressed by the Ministry of Education. The issue of the unique germplasm is being addressed by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, and any other concern would be addressed by the Government of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President, I thank you.
Senator Mark.
Madam President, in light of these challenges and the considerations via these consultations, can the Minister indicate to us or the Senate whether there is the government intends to issue or proceed with a moratorium while these consultations are in session?
Minister.
Madam President, I'm not very clear what is meant by a moratorium, but I can say that the government and the respective agencies which I've identified have taken into consideration the issues identified and are all addressing the issues that have been identified.
Senator Ramleen.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, through you to the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, I would like to ask the Minister if the Minister has seen the presentation that has been made by the HDC to the public in these public consultations.
Minister.
Madam President, I have not attended any of the consultations, but I am familiar with the material that has been presented by the HDC at the consultations. I'm familiar with the issues that have been raised at the consultation by way of reports I've received and what I've followed in the media and recordings I've seen. And I can't say I'm familiar with everything that has transpired, but I'm familiar with most of the matters.
Senator Ramleen.
Madam President, a follow-up on that answer from the Honourable Minister. I thank the Minister for the answer. Is the Minister of Agriculture satisfied that the information that is provided by the Housing Development Corporation at these public consultations with respect to this project provides the public and those affected by this project with enough information to be informed about the effects of this project in St. Augustine?
Minister.
Madam President, as I've said, concerns have been raised. In fact, yesterday's consultation went late into the evening, as far as I know, and I would never be satisfied that the concerns have been taken into consideration because, for example, fully satisfied because yesterday's consultations, there were concerns raised that I know have not been addressed. So this is an ongoing process. There's a particular process that must be followed in these development projects, and ultimately, the government has an interest in satisfying all the issues that have been raised.
Senator Mark.
Would the Minister indicate whether in the wake or in the face of these consultations and the continued destruction of vital trees essential
Senator
for...
Mark, could you ask the question, please?
Yeah. Can the Minister advise this Honourable House whether he intends to call for discontinuation of the destruction and cutting down of trees in the St. Augustine industries, Madam President?
Minister of Agriculture.
Madam President, the trees that have been removed not only in St. Augustine nurseries but at plant propagation stations around the country, three plant propagation stations. This is in compliance with the law. Citrus greening has been declared a notifiable disease. The ministry, through expert advice, has determined that there are diseased trees at these propagating stations, and the local citrus industry, if it has to if we have to create new planting material for the industry, we have to do it at propagating stations which are free from the citrus greening disease. So, Madam President, the minister does not get involved in that. There are technical officers in the ministry, and I would say that in January 2018, the Director of Agriculture Services, Patricia Maraj, made a request of the Permanent Secretary in the ministry to destroy over 2,900 citrus trees, including 1,622 at St. Augustine Nurseries, in compliance with the appropriate regulation. And that is something that is dealt with by the technical officers of the ministry, and the minister is not involved in it.
Senator Amin.
Thank you, Madam President. Could the minister, you indicated that the trees will be destroyed. After the removal of the trees, the diseased trees, the land is not affected. So does the government intend to continue use of the land for the same purpose?
Minister.
Madam President, having regard to a decision, a policy decision taken by the government, which has been well articulated, the government is pursuing the development of a housing project in that area.
Next question, Senator Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. Question number 98 to the Attorney General.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, Trinidad and Tobago has not been blacklisted as a tax haven by the European Union. A list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes was published by the Council of European Union on December 5th, 2017, comprising 17 jurisdictions, including Trinidad and Tobago, and also listing 44 other countries that were called upon to implement good governance principles and measures against tax evasion and tax avoidance. That list was updated on March 16, 2018, which identifies Trinidad and Tobago together with 8 other jurisdictions: American Samoa, the Bahamas, Guam, Namibia, Palau, Samoa, St. Kitts and Nevis, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The list is based on the EU's assessment of compliance by countries with the Council of European Union 3 criterion comprising tax transparency, fair taxation, and implementation of anti-base erosion and profit sharing measures, otherwise referred to as BEPS, which form part of a package of measures that are intended to boost global transparency. The main part of the criterion is to enhance transparency in the field of taxation, which is linked to combating tax evasion and improving tax collection. The publication of the Council of Europe is directly linked to the tax transparency obligations under the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes. This was a commitment given by the former government in January 2011 for Trinidad and Tobago to comply with these international obligations, with no measures, no steps, and no work undertaken by the UNC government to achieve these purposes in the period 2011 and to 2015. This government has established a technical working team tasked with addressing all the outstanding matters. We have provided high-level political commitment to the EU on November 21st, 2017, and further on March 14th, 2018, to ensure Trinidad and Tobago's full compliance with the Council of EU criterion. The current legal framework already facilitates the exchange of information for tax transparency to a certain degree, but does not fully satisfy the EU criteria. In order to address the EU criteria, a comprehensive review of all our current laws was conducted, together with the drafting of new legislation and amendments to current law by a technical working team led by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs. The review was conducted with the support of the Global Forum, with a package of legislation to be introduced in Parliament shortly. I remind, all of this should have been done in the period 2011 to 2015, but none of it was done by the UNC government then. The government intends that the package of laws comprising amendments to the Income Tax Act, amendments to the double taxation agreements by way of a bill to that effect, the Companies Amendment Bill, which we have drafted for that purpose, and the Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill 2018 will be brought to Parliament shortly. We will require the support of the opposition for that purpose, as some of these measures contained in the proposed legislation will involve 3/5 majority support. It is a matter of public attention to be paid to the course of this exercise, as we are not confident yet that we will have the support of the opposition in this enterprise, notwithstanding their failure to undertake any of the work that was required in the relevant period. I thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Madam President, may I ask the Honourable Attorney General whether he is aware that on the 7th of February 2018, on a news item coming from the European Parliament, that Trinidad and Tobago has been blacklisted as a money laundering nation. Are you aware of this?
Madam President, I am very loath to accept much of what is transported, displayed, and alleged to be news, especially when it comes from the opposition. I have just set out for the record that the reason that we are treated in the fashion that we are is a direct and complete failure and dereliction of duty on the part of the UNC, which has prejudiced Trinidad and Tobago because they just did not bother to do the work over the 4 years that it was required to be done. But they had the time, as they did in going to Berlin, to travel up and down without doing a shred of work. So I think that it is rather infradig for the Honourable Senator to be asking about things without reference to where this publication came from, who made it, what it actually says, whether it exists, what the text is supposed to really say as opposed to what is said. And in those circumstances, I take no guidance or comfort from the matters raised by my learned colleague, Senator Mark.
After those fulminations.
Next question, Senator Mark.
I'm asking.
Yes.
And I don't need no assistance from these people. I am addressing to the Honourable President. Nobody else. The slave master, of course. Yeah. Modern. But anyway, we got rid of you a long time. Madam President, may I address you, please? Madam President, the Honourable Attorney General has asked for proof.
That is not a question.
Madam President, is the Attorney General aware that on the 7th of the 2nd, 2018, in a press release coming out of the European Parliament, Trinidad and Tobago has been added to the money laundering blacklist of countries? Is the Attorney General aware of this development? That is what I asked the Attorney General.
Senator Mark. Senator Mark, that question was posed already. Do you have a new supplementary question? And before Senator Mark poses his new supplementary question, I would ask for some silence in the chamber. Continue, Senator Mark.
Madam President, can I ask the Honourable Attorney General, what can Trinidad and Tobago do collectively to address those 3 elements that was outlined by the Honourable Attorney General to facilitate our becoming a normal country under the European arrangement? Can he advise us what could be done to deal with these 3 elements?
Senator Mark, please, at that question, the Attorney General gave a response, and the response was given, and that question was covered in the response. So can you ask another question, please?
Madam President, I would like to ask the Attorney General, why has it taken so long for Trinidad and Tobago to address these critical elements that are supposed to be dealt with by the Parliament in an effort to lift our country from that non-jurisdictional point that was raised by the Honorable Attorney General a short while ago.
Attorney General.
Thank you. Madam President, I'm astounded that Senator Mark had asked the last question. What took us so long? The United National Congress failed to do any work in the period 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. Worse yet, it involved the negotiation of double taxation arrangements with 13 countries, similar to the arrangements done under the IGA for FATCA. None of the approaches were made. None of the work was done. It was a complete and absolute dereliction of duty, which has cost the taxpayers of this country, which has caused the banks to suffer correspondent banking losses, which has resulted in stockbroking accounts coming under pressure. And I blame the UNC in their various incarnations and labels for putting the people of Trinidad and Tobago in this situation.
Next question, Senator Mark.
You should have told us which banks, man. Listen, slave master.
Senator.
Sorry.
No, please.
All right.
Please. Please. Members. Members, please. Senator Mark, please put down your hand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I please, as we proceed, question time is almost up. Please let us do it in a manner that is in accordance with this chamber. Senator Mark. Question.
I'm seeking your protection from this modern.
You will always have my protection. Please pose your question. Number 99, Senator Mark.
I am coming, Madam President.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with a modern slave master.
Senator Mark, please, members on the government bench, please allow Senator Mark to pose his question, please. Senator Mark, please also, I'm saying a lot of please, you'll realize that, right? But Senator Mark, don't make that comment again, okay? Senator, no, Attorney General, no. Senator, no. Attorney General. Senator Mark, pose your next question.
Question number 99 to the Honorable Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam President, there's no public record of any area called Damry Hill in San Fernando, and therefore it is not possible to answer this question. Thank you, Madam President.
Next question, Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam President. Question number 119 to the...
That question was deferred.
Sorry, question number 120 to the new Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
No, Senator Obika.
To the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Have a seat. Pose your question properly. Okay? We are in the Senate here. Pose your question properly. I will give you that opportunity.
Question number 120 to the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, Madam President.
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the Pro League was established in 2002 following the collapse of the professional football administered by Trinidad and Tobago Football Federation. The league was intended to become self-financing, but could not attract corporate sponsors because of the poor image of the administration of football over the years. Accordingly, from 2004 to 2017, the government, either directly from the Ministry of Sport through the sports company, has funded the Pro League to the tune of $76.3 million. Notwithstanding the failure of the Pro League to become self-financing over the years, today the Cabinet approved funding for the period of 2018 to 2020 in the sum of $11.1 million, with $4.8 million to be disbursed in 2018. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam President. Given this recent revelation and the fact that the league should have started shortly or should have started already, can the Honourable Minister inform the Senate when will these funds be released to the Pro League?
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I hope the members are aware that the league is due to start a little later on this year, if I'm not mistaken, in the month of June. And over the years, the practice has been for the league to present to the Ministry of Sport its financial information, and the audited financials for the year 2017 has not been provided as yet. The Ministry of Sport has written to Pro League so that they could submit their financials, and this money is going to be disbursed in time for Pro League this year. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam President. Notwithstanding the Minister's statement regarding the start of the league, is the Minister aware that our national icon, Dennis Torres Lawrence, points to a disadvantage to the national team due to a weak league, due to lack of funding? It's for they cannot prepare during the pre-season preparation.
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
President, I'm not even sure if the member is sure of the question he wants to ask. The matter has been decided by Cabinet today for the funding to be provided for the league, and when the financials are provided to the Ministry of Sport and Sport Company, the funding is going to be provided to Pro League. And we always call on corporate sponsors to provide assistance to our sporting fraternities in Trinidad and Tobago, and further, the government offers incentives to encourage corporate sponsors to provide that.
Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam President. To allay the fears of our national captain, of our national coach,
Senator
can
Obika,
the Minister indicate?
Senator Obika,
yes.
Can you ask your question, please?
Thank you very much.
Pose
I was just hearing
question.
some disturbances.
Yes? No.
So, can the Minister indicate to allay the fears of the national coach, Dennis Torres Lawrence, how has she taken into consideration the disadvantage the national team has suffered due to lack of funding?
Senator Obika, I will not allow that question. Continue.
Public business, government business, committee stage.
Honourable Senators, the committee stage of the following bill, which was adjourned on Friday. The committee stage of the following bill, which was adjourned on Friday, April the 20th, 2018, will be resumed. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Valuation of Land Act, Chapter 5803. The Senate shall now go into committee. Honourable Senators, before we begin, Is everyone in receipt of an amendment circulated on behalf of the Minister of Finance? That was circulated. It's dated today's date, April the 26th, 2018. Is everyone in possession of that? Members, am I speaking to myself? Thank you very much. Members, when last we met, we had deferred clause 15 for further consideration. I remind members that Senator Shriki Soon has a proposed amendment. Senator Ram Kisoon has a proposed amendment. Senator Mark has a proposed amendment, and I think, Senator Mahabir, you withdrew your amendment. Yes.
Drawing any amendment that was placed before the Senate before, and the amendment that has been circulated in the name of the Minister of Finance is the government's proposed amendment to clause 15 of the bill and consequential amendments flowing therefrom.
Minister of Finance, can you therefore go through your proposed amendment?
Certainly, Madam President. Madam Chairman, thank you very much. Madam Chairman and members, honorable senators, having considered views expressed by members of the Senate, we are proposing to make changes to clause 15. The first fundamental change is the removal of the minister as the person who appoints the members of the Valuation Tribunal. And we have substituted the minister with two different entities: the President of the Republic and the President, meaning Cabinet. If you look carefully at the amendment, we've also addressed the question of a quorum and whether 3 members was adequate to deal with work of this nature. A view was expressed that if there are 3 members of this tribunal and only 2 show up, would that really constitute proper decision-making? So that the government is now proposing that we expand the Valuation Tribunal to 5, and the quorum shall be 3. Following the model of the Tax Appeal Board, the members are appointed as follows. The chairman and vice chairman shall be an attorney of law of not less than 10 years standing. The chairman and vice chairman shall be appointed by the president acting in accordance with the advice of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. The members of the appeal board, other than the chairman and vice chairman, shall be appointed by the president from among such persons as appear to the president to be qualified by virtue of their knowledge or experience in law, commerce, finance, industry, accountancy, taxation, or the valuation of property. So that's the status quo. So following the status quo in our amendment, this 5-member tribunal that we are proposing, the chairperson or chairman, as the case may be, shall be an attorney at law with at least 10 years experience, so that mirrors the current tax appeal board, and 4 other persons appointed by the president, 2 of whom shall have qualifications and experience in the valuation of property. And that again is similar to the current tax appeal board. The chairperson shall be appointed by the president on the advice of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, and that again is identical to the current tax appeal board, which is the entity that deals with assessments of taxation or matters leading to an imposition of tax. By way of information, I checked several of the similar tribunals and commissions that exist in law at this point in time. And for the benefit of honorable senators, for example, the Fair Trading Commission, which deals with monopolies and makes provision for anti-monopoly measures. In that situation, the Fair Trading Commission shall consist of not less than 3, no more than 5, appointed by the President. And in this Fair Trading Commission, the word President, because it has no other words after it, such as in consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition or on the advice of, the learning is that once the President appears on its own, that means Cabinet, and the instruments are in fact sent to the President by the Secretary to the Cabinet. So the Fair Trading Commission, all 5 are appointed by the Cabinet. The Regulated Industries Commission, again, not less than 5, no more than 7, appointed by the President, again by the Cabinet. So the entire Regulated Industries Commission is appointed by the Cabinet. The Environmental Management Commission, which is a commission that deals with appeals with respect to environmental matters, a very, very important commission, especially more so in Trinidad and Tobago today. Again, all members are appointed by the Cabinet, so that what we are proposing here is consistent with existing law in many areas. I just give a few examples here. The Industrial Court, for example, again, a very important institution. All of the members of the Industrial Court are appointed by the Cabinet. So we felt that GLSE, yeah, except for the President and so on, but the ordinary members are appointed by the Cabinet. So that we thought that we should follow precedent, existing practice, and I'll give you the reason. The Valuation of Land Tribunal is intended to deal with assessments of the value of land that lead to the calculation of property tax, that lead to the collection of revenue by the government. And the collection of revenue by the government goes to the core of the government's function and is profoundly connected to the management of the economy and the governance of the country. In all of these commissions, tribunals, and so on, it was recognized that whereas there is no difficulty with giving the President of the Republic, who is not elected by popular vote but appointed by the Electoral College or elected by the Electoral College, the President of the Republic does not face the polls. The President of the Republic cannot, the actions of the President of the Republic cannot be normally challenged in a court of law, but there have been challenges recently. Whereas a minister, for example, if a minister or the Cabinet sought to appoint a member of one of these tribunals or boards that I have referred to, that appointment would be subject to judicial review. Ministers and the Cabinet are appointable to Parliament and are subject to judicial review. The President is not easily subject to judicial review. So that if you sought to create, as I see has been proposed by some members, a tribunal of this nature where every single person is appointed by the President in her discretion, you would take away that opportunity for persons to challenge the appointment by way of judicial review. So we on this side, Madam Speaker, the government feels very strongly that we've listened. We've removed the minister entirely. We've put in the chairman being appointed by the President on the advice of the Judicial Service Commission, and there's a reason for that, because the chairman shall be an attorney. We did not think it made much practical common sense for the other members to be appointed by the JLSC, or on the advice of the JLSC, because the JLSC does not deal with valuations and property matters. So that we think we have covered all of the concerns raised, and we have come up with a formulation that there's ample precedent in law. And I want to make the point, there's established precedent, and Attorney General helped me with the case. It's not the Surat case. There's another case, Paul Lai. I don't mind if you won the case. I don't mind if you won the case, Madam Chairman, through you.
Was paid, honey.
I don't mind, and I'm sure you were paid very well for that. Okay. But in the Paul Lai matter, the issue was if a tribunal is appointed by an entity that is not the President of the Republic or some such entity, how independent is this tribunal? And what the Privy Council decided was that the appointment is not really the issue. It is how the tribunal functions afterwards. And if you look in this law very carefully, the minister cannot give any directions to the Valuation Tribunal. So even though the cabinet, and the Attorney General is reminding me that this does not appear in other laws, that the minister cannot give any direction or in any way try to influence the actions of the Valuation Tribunal. So the issue is not who appoints per se. The issue is how do you remove them and how do they function? Are they independent? And we have a system in this country, and I've experienced it personally, and I have no problem with talking about a personal experience, where in existing law there was a particular board that was appointed to be appointed by the cabinet, but there were reasons for the removal. And if we look in this amendment, there shall now be reasons for the removal of a member of this tribunal, such as misbehavior, physical or mental incapacity, bankruptcy, etc. There was a particular board, I would not say which board it was, but we sought to make a change coming in as a new government. We sought to reconstitute that board, and in particular the chairman. And when we advised His Excellency that we needed to reconstitute this particular board, His Excellency said, well, what's the reason? So we told him the reason. And it did fall within some of the categories of, the normal reasons that you would want to remove somebody from a tribunal. But we had not put that in writing to His Excellency. And he said, well, until you put that in writing, he would not act on the advice of cabinet with respect to the removal of this particular person from this particular board. And since we did not want to go down that road, we did not think it was sufficiently important in order to embarrass the person involved, we left the person there. So the president acted and said, because this particular piece of legislation gives reasons for the removal of a person, and since you have not supplied evidence of your reason for the removal of the person, I will not remove the person. And we accepted that. So that the point in these tribunals, it is not who appoints, it is how the tribunal functions, whether they are subject to interference, and how persons can be removed. So we think that our formulation, chairperson, attorney at law, appointed by the President on the advice of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, and the other members appointed by the President, which means cabinet, more than satisfies requirements of public policy. So I would ask honourable members to accept our proposal. If I can go to the second page of the amendment circulated and just read, the President in his discretion may suspend the chairperson on the ground of misbehavior of physical or mental capacity or for cause. The President may suspend a member of the tribunal other than the chairperson, same thing, misbehavior, physical or mental incapacity or for cause. Where the chairperson becomes bankrupt, applies to take benefit of any law for the relief of the bankrupt, etc., removed by the President acting in his own discretion. So again, that would be the President of the Republic. Where a member of the Valuation Tribunal other than the chairperson becomes bankrupt, again, the President shall remove him from office, so that would be the cabinet. But again, the President of the day could, even if they're advised by cabinet, to remove a member if the cabinet does not produce the evidence that the person is bankrupt or is compounding with their creditors. The President can exercise the right not to follow the advice of cabinet. And as I said, I have actually experienced this particular situation.
The others deal with resignation.
And then the resignation, we give the members the opportunity to resign. The chairperson would resign to the President, and the other members would resign to the chairperson.
We recognize that there was a duplication. So
and there's some typos that we're dealing with in the proposed section 25H. We're taking out paragraph B, which was a duplication as paragraph A, and we introduced a confidentiality clause with a fine if any confidential information that is submitted to this valuation tribunal is published. And I think, Madam President, that we have accommodated the views and we are in accordance with public policy and general practice. So I'd like to commend this amendment to the Senate.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think we are in a worse position today than when we last met. Madam President, this is a quasi-judicial body, and I can't understand why politicians, in the manifestations of ministerial garments, would want to insist that they have a majority on a committee or on a tribunal. So we have excised the minister, and we have now put his cabinet. So the cabinet will be doing the work of the minister. Madam President, Madam Chair, we just got a judgment out of the High Court in which a minister was accused by a judge of illegality.
Well,
no, I'm just drawing to your attention.
Senator
And
Mark,
it is not even a judicial, it is not even a quasi-judicial body. So I'm saying that here it is. You have 700,000 properties. And Madam President, Madam Chair, you saw the invasive nature of the questions that you and I are being asked to supply to the Commissioner of Valuation. So here it is and so on. The politician, in a modern form of data mining, is seeking to get, Madam President, private and confidential information from 700,000 property owners. And then, Madam President, we are being asked here by the government to trust them. Madam President,
Senator Mark,
you gave this minister a lot of time.
Senator,
Give me some time,
all right,
please.
here's the story. I gave the minister time. That's completely within my purview. I'm just asking you, you've made your contribution, I'm just asking you to just finish it off now, please, because I think we've gotten the gist. No, Senator Mark, other members wish to make some contributions.
Why are you handcuffing us?
I'm not handcuffing you. Just make your presentation, because you're starting to repeat what you're saying.
No, that might be a view. Everybody have an opinion.
All right.
I'm not challenging anybody. Madam President, if you allow me to speak, because Parliament is parley.
Senator Mark.
Speak.
No, stop. Stop right now. Please do not go down this path today. Okay? Finish your contribution, please, Senator Mark.
Madam President, if you allow me, I will.
Senator Mark, I've invited you to, so don't.
Madam President.
We're not having, Senator Mark, listen, members, we're not having a tete-a-tete here. I am inviting you to finish your point on Clause 15, the amendment as circulated on behalf of the Minister.
Madam President, I'm saying that when I am advising and advancing at the same time, that the Minister made references to the Fair Trading Commission. He made a reference to the Environmental Authority Commission, or Environmental Commission. And, Madam President, we are on new territory. This is new territory. And as far as we are concerned, we have given the government a fair approach. We have said, go to the Tax Appeal Board. Go to that model. That model talks about a chairman and a vice chairman. The minister has introduced this afternoon, Madam President. In addition to the 3, he has introduced 2 more. So he has now made it 5. He has never said in his statement that one is going to be chairman and the other will be vice chairman. and consistent with the model that they want to propose. No, you have a chairman, and in the absence of a chairman, Madam Chair, you have a vice chairman. So the vice chairman of the Tax Appeal Board is appointed also by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. But the government is insisting that they only want one to be appointed and the next 4 to be at large. Madam President, we know how political influences work, and we are not in favor of the arrangement that is being proposed by the Minister of Finance. So I will pause with your leave at this time.
Senator Ramdeen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the Honourable Minister and having looked at the amendment that has been proposed, I have a few comments to make. Firstly, the Minister has justified the fact of the changes in the persons who will have the authority to appoint by indicating that if the President, in certain circumstances, were to appoint a chairman, there is a limited power within the court to challenge the President in making that appointment, and therefore the argument of the Minister is that if the appointment of the 4 other persons is made by the Cabinet, meaning the President acting on the advice of the Cabinet pursuant to Section 80, it would give an opportunity for persons to challenge that decision. Well, Madam President, respectfully, and with the greatest respect to the Minister, who I have great intellectual respect for, that doesn't hold any water in law, because our jurisprudence has reached the point where we have had examples all the way to the Privy Council in the Dumas judgment, where in a similar situation, the Court of Appeal and the Privy Council has held that all of these appointments in these public positions are subject to the scrutiny of the Court, whether made by the Cabinet, and in those cases where it was an appointment to the Police Service Commission, whether made by the President. So that saying that the justification of the government is that you will be able to judicially review it doesn't provide any additional ground, as the jurisprudence presently stands, to justify the change, because if the person is appointed by the President or the person is appointed by the Cabinet, the way in which our law has developed, it is on either of those appointments, any citizen, the Court of Appeal has said, any citizen is entitled under the provisions of the preamble of the Constitution. They have a civic duty, it is described by the Court of Appeal, to challenge that decision. So that justification of the Minister, I don't think, is one that is properly grounded in law. The Minister has made reference to a number of tribunals, and with respect to that approach to justifying the way in which these persons are to be appointed under this particular tribunal, while we can gain some kind of benefit from looking at the different tribunals that are the Tax Appeal Board, the Industrial Court, the Environmental Commission, it seems as though the approach of the government is to look at how these different tribunals are appointed and to choose different aspects of them to comprise the present tribunal, the lawfulness of which we are debating. And I don't think that is the correct approach, because the only tribunal that has been subject in our jurisdiction, there are 2 that have been subject to judicial comment all the way to the Privy Council, is the Equal Opportunities Tribunal in Surat and the Industrial Court in Paulai and Samraj. In neither of those judgments has the court specifically said, this is the reason why we consider this to be the position. In the Equal Opportunities case that went to the Privy Council, what you had is that examples were given of different ways in which the independence of the tribunal is secured. And when one looks at the judgment in Surat, there are certain aspects of the Equal Opportunities Tribunal that are not present here.
So, Senator Ramdeen, can I ask you to therefore...
I will.
Yes.
So, what I wish to say to the Minister is, the Minister made a point that what the courts look at is not really the power to appoint, but the way in which the tribunal works. And that is perhaps partially correct. But the main judicial determination that we've had about these tribunals has been with respect to the industrial court. And I would invite the minister to look again at the Pauli judgment and to look again at the Samra judgment, particularly Samra judgment. And you'll see the reason why that executive appointment has been justified by the court as being lawful. It's not because of the manner, but it's because of the experience that the court took into account, the way in which the court has worked over time. And therefore, I don't think that the composition of the tribunal, as we have it here, is one that will pass the lawfulness test. Now, I would ask the minister one question, which is this, and I will wrap up on that, which is this. What is the difficulty in allowing these persons, all 5 of them, to be appointed by the president in her own discretion? Okay. Why does the minister want to hold on to that power?
Thank you, Senator Ramdi. Any other? Yes, Senator Mahabir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I had initially proposed an amendment, which I withdrew, and I'm now observing the government's amendment to the same clause. I have 2 concerns. One, operationality, and the second, public trust, operationality. Under Clause 5, it states that the Valuation Tribunal shall consist of a chairperson who shall be an attorney at law with at least 10 years' experience as an attorney at law. Straightforward. But it does not say that this attorney at law has any experience in valuation matters. He is a person with 10 years' experience as an attorney at law, which is very wide. And then it comes down to subsection 4, which says any meeting of the Valuation Tribunal, a quorum is constituted if at least 3 members are present. So under 2 subsection B, it says that the minister proposes to appoint 4 who shall have 2 of whom shall have qualifications and experience. The operational concern I have is this. Since the quorum is 3, we have a chairman who is appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, attorney at law. But it is quite likely that with a quorum of 3, the 2 other members who constitute the quorum are also 2 other members who have no experience in valuation. So according to the constitution here, the construct here, it is quite likely that a quorum will be established with a chairman, attorney in litigation, and 2 other members who are present. They form the quorum, and the 2 members who have experience in valuation are absent, and so we can have a full quorum with 3 people, none of whom with experience. And it is of concern to me for operationality, and what I would recommend for the Honourable Minister to consider is that under 15 subclause 4, at any meeting of the Valuation Tribunal, a quorum is constituted if at least 3 members are present, one of whom has experience and qualifications in the valuation of property. And that would cover the concern that I have, that whenever the quorum is constituted, there is at least 1 member in that quorum with the experience in valuation. That's for public trust. But the other concern I have, Madam Chair, is, and I will not repeat because Senator Ramdeen did advance the issue, what is the harm in saying, again, for public confidence and trust? Reason is, Madam President, valuation is different from tax. The Tax Appeal Board members will be guided by the Income Tax Act and the Value Added Tax Act. And so I am not surprised that 2 members there, chairman and vice chairman, are appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. But this valuation tribunal is a completely new one where there is a greater level of subjectivity in the valuation of property. The market for property is incomplete. It is not a perfect market. So I'm wondering, for public confidence and trust, since we have had issues with valuation, you see, the concern of the public, Madam President, is this.
Right. I think the minister understands your point.
So, okay, the minister understands. The concern that I have is, in order to create greater public trust in a tribunal which is dealing with matters of a greater subjective nature than the Tax Appeal Board, what is the harm, and I want to echo Senator Ramdeen's position, what is the harm of simply saying in 15(2)(b in consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition?
Okay. Just 1 second. Anybody else wishes to make a comment? Senator, that is a little different from what has been said. Senator Hussain. And then I will invite the Minister to respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Now, my issues are regarding the security of tenure and also the remuneration of the members of this tribunal. Now, the Valuation Tribunal is in effect going to perform the function that was bestowed on the Tax Appeal Board, and we see that they were allowed sufficient protection in terms of their tenure and also their remuneration. So my question to the Minister is that who is going to be the one setting the remuneration of these members, and whether or not it can be unilaterally changed? And also, I don't see sufficient protection being given to the other members of the tribunal, notwithstanding that the amendment, it gives the grounds of misbehavior, physical or mental incapacity, or for cause. Or for cause is a very wide discretion on the part of the cabinet, because it's the president acting on basically its cabinet that would be removing this member. So those are my concerns, Madam Chair.
Minister.
President, and the Attorney General has indicated he would like to make a comment after me, if that is okay with you. Senator Ramdeen is an experienced lawyer, but in the case of Reginald Dumas that went to the Privy Council, all that was at stake was the interpretation of the words qualified and experienced. In fact, if you look at the decision of the Privy Council in that matter, they did not in any way address and said they were not addressing the right of the president to make appointments, and also those parts of the Constitution which immunize the president from a lawsuit. And I'll read from the decision of Lord Hodge in that particular case, which is the Attorney General versus Dumas, because it went to the highest court of appeal. It was delivered on the 8th of May 2017, and Lord Hodge said, this appeal raises an important question about the jurisdiction of the High Court to hear an application by a citizen for the court to interpret a provision of the Constitution. And that particular provision, when you scroll down to the end of the decision of the Privy Council, what the Privy Council found and what the Privy Council ruled was that neither the Parliament nor the President has the power to interpret the Constitution. Only the High Court can interpret the Constitution. So that what was at stake there was the meaning of the words qualified and experienced. Just wanted to put that on the record. But it is not easy to challenge the actions of the President. This is a novel case, but it is quite unique in its application. With respect to the point made by Senator Mahabir, the Tax Appeal Board, if you look in the Parent Act, the Valuation of Land Act, you will see that appeals of valuations are currently determined by the Tax Appeal Board. So there's no difference with this tribunal. It's doing one of the things that the Tax Appeal Board. So the Tax Appeal Board does not just deal with matters of assessments of corporation tax, income tax, and so on. It also is required under the current Valuation of Land Act to deal with the Tax Appeal Board. So that this is really what we're seeking to do. The Tax Appeal Board is overloaded. I don't know how many members here have had a matter before the Tax Appeal Board. I see Senator Small shaking his head. What happens in Trinidad and Tobago, because the Tax Appeal Board is so overwhelmed by the number of matters before it, is that quite often you get into the situation where your matter is there for years. I mean, I'm sure the Attorney General could talk about matters that have been in before the Tax Appeal Board for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and so on. The purpose of a tribunal like this is it's not really new. This is an evolving law that has evolved over the last 20 years or so, where you try to create a panel, a tribunal that is not a court, so you don't populate it only with lawyers. You try to reduce costs so that persons will not be required to hire senior counsel and so on. And you try to reach a resolution of the matter using experts in the field. If the applicants are dissatisfied, well, they have the recourse to the court, and then they have to go through the full gamut, high court, appeal court, and so on. But the rationale for something like this is to try to sort these matters out. And in other jurisdictions, in the UK, for example, in the construction industry, you have adjudication tribunal that deals with disputes in construction contracts. And the experience has been that 90% of the matters that go to that adjudication tribunal are settled by the tribunal. Only 10% move on to the High Court, where you then have to hire persons like Senator Ramdeen and pay them a lot of money and so on. And then you find yourself in the court system. So what we're trying to do here is to pull out from the Tax Appeal Board this matter, because as Senator Mark has pointed out, there are hundreds of thousands of properties. There will be hundreds of thousands of valuations. We have no idea how many of them will be objected to. It might be a small number, but it would still add to the burden that already exists within the Tax Appeal Board, and we in the government are really have to look at that. That's another problem on its own in terms of trying to make the Tax Appeal Board more efficient. So that's why we pulled it out. But this is not intended to be a court. It is not intended to be populated only by lawyers. And it is not intended to have all the features of a court. It is quasi-judicial, that is true, but it is not intended to be a court. And if I could use an example of an actual court, the family court, for example, was designed to remove the adversarial nature of the court system and try to resolve matters by mediation. So there's no requirement for everybody inside of here to be a lawyer. I have no objection to adding a few more qualifications to the members in here. If you look at the Tax Appeal Board, for example, you would see that the members of the Tax Appeal Board that are appointed by the Cabinet can be selected from among persons who have qualifications in accountancy, in property valuation, and so on. So we could add a few more professions. Instead of just saying 2 of the members shall be persons with qualifications and experience in property valuation, we can say they shall be selected from among persons. We can list about 4 or 5 professions. And by the way, when you do that, it does not mean that everybody has to come from every single profession. It's just a pool of professions that you can choose from.
Minister,
sure.
may I? Yeah, okay. You see, I don't think that you need to go there, because my concern was that as long as in the quorum, and you did amend so that at least 2 persons now must have the expertise, which makes it possible to have a quorum. But as long as in the quorum there is someone with the expertise, because tribunals are necessarily expert in nature. You have to have dedicated expertise. And once there is at least 1 member in there with the experience in valuation to form the quorum together with the chairman, I think that will satisfy. That is, because you see, the chairperson, according to what it states here, is not necessarily the individual with the expertise in valuation.
I wanted to address that point. When you appoint a judge, all the person has to have is 10 years experience and have a good record. But they don't have to be an expert in criminal law. They don't have to be an expert in corporate law. They don't have to be an expert in public law. That's when judges are selected, you look at the person themselves, and you don't limit yourself to an attorney who has practiced in a particular jurisdiction. I would not want to limit the experience of the attorney who is to be the chairman of this tribunal. I would not want to do that.
I agree with you, but the point is, when it comes to the quorum,
no, well, I'll be coming to that.
Right.
I just wanted to dispense with that particular point. Now, we will have a discussion amongst ourselves, myself and the Attorney General. I personally have no issue with what you are recommending, but the Attorney General may have a different point of view, and he's speaking after me anyhow in this session. With respect to the point made by Senator Ramdeen, this is a democratic state. The government is elected by popular vote. The government is accountable to the people through the parliament and at the polls and in the courts. You can't emasculate the government in terms of creating tribunals of this nature and take the ability of the government, take away from the government the ability to create tribunals to deal with the administration of the government. You can't, we could go too much to one extreme. You could have, over here, you could say the government is in complete control, the ministers appointing everybody. Over here, you could say the president appoints everybody, but you must have a mix, because we are, for the time being, we on this side, are the democratically elected executive. There are three arms of the state. You have the executive, the judiciary, and the parliament. So I have noticed a certain tendency in recent times to try to emasculate the democratically elected government of the country and take away from the government the ability to make decisions as to who should comprise tribunals of this nature. And that is why we firmly believe that there should be a mix. And that is why in this amendment, we say that the chairperson shall be appointed by the president on the advice of the JLSC. But we strongly believe that the other members, the government should and must have some say in determining who is in this tribunal, because this deals with taxation. Taxation goes to the core of the functioning of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And to simply remove that function from the government, I think it's completely impractical. It sounds nice. It sounds nice that every tribunal, every commission, everything should be appointed by the president in consultation or in his or her discretion, but it is not practical, because what you're doing, you're undermining the entire fabric of our republic, the way it's constituted with the three arms of the state. So I respectfully cannot agree with your proposal that all of the members of this particular tribunal should be appointed by the president, because this is a matter of taxation, revenue, and the management of the economy.
General, you had something you wish to add?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. I propose to just make 3 specific responses to some of the submissions given. On the first hand, Senator Mark indicated that we were worse off today than previously. And Senator Ramdeen made, in summary, a submission suggesting that all 5 persons should be the President's discretion appointees. Senator Mahabe has asked for one of the members to sit basically alongside the chairman. It's imperative to clarify the position stands in several of these tribunals and quasi-judicial and even courts of superior record. Let's start with the Industrial Court. The Industrial Court is a court of superior record. The Tax Appeal Board, let's deal with that as well. When you look to Section 4, Section 3 of the Tax Appeal Establishment and the Industrial Court, there is no limit to the persons that Cabinet can appoint in those bodies. It says the chairman, vice chairman, but the vice chairman in the Tax Appeal Board can be appointed from anyone. It doesn't have to be the 2 JLSC appointments. That's the first point. Secondly, in the Industrial Court, where they sit in divisions, you only have the president and one other in the Industrial Court appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. You can therefore, in law, dilute by way of cabinet appointees in both of those institutions. Completely. There's no limit on the number of persons you can appoint to either one of them. Senator Ramdeen knows very well, as I believe he did appear in the Paul Lai matter as junior counsel to Mr. Martineau, and that matter was a very good judgment coming out of the Court of Appeal and then Privy Council. There's also the Sam Maraj case and there's the Surat case. In Surat, considering the Equal Opportunities Commission, and in the Samaraj and Paul Lai cases considering the Industrial Court, the courts were very careful to point out that courts of this type, i.e. specialist tribunals, are necessary for the type of democracy that we have, embodying the very points that the Minister of Finance has put on the table: diminishing costs, ease of judgments, lack of formality in process, all of which are included as elements of the bill before us here. It is a fact that the divisions of the industrial court can be comprised of persons who are pure cabinet appointees, pure. And that's a court of superior record. And in a court of record such as that, the argument as to what's their security of tenure, what is the political coordination, how do you limit the executive's influence, we've had Privy Council decision telling us that there's nothing wrong in the composition of these courts because of the same reasons that the Minister of Finance put forward. It is the manner in which they operate, the due processing, and the fact that they are reviewable. So to answer Senator Hussein's position, the proposals of this bill are in terms of security of tenure exactly the same as the Tax Appeal Board, exactly the same. Secondly, in the Tax Appeal Board and the Industrial Court, they are same construction, JLSC, and members. Thirdly, in fact, in the Tax Appeal Board and in the Industrial Court, you may very well have non-lawyers sitting as members of the tribunals and sub-tribunals there. So this is well tested. It's a correct formula. The last point that I wish to make, I want to remind that money bills and taxation in particular is a prerogative of any elected government. And it's so strong a prerogative that the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago sets out that you only need to pass your appropriation bill in the House of Representatives, not in the Senate. And that is because a government, having been elected by our constitutional process, is entitled to raise revenue for the peace, order, and good governance of our society. So we must be very careful to not swing the pendulum all the way. And I'll lay one last example. Look at what happened in the commission appointed to investigate and appoint a commissioner of police. Pure presidential appointees ended up in scandal.
Well,
I'll remove that example there.
Yeah.
But under investigation, let's put it that way. So the point is, you have to be careful to understand what's my mischief, what's the balance to the mischief, what's the prerogatives. This bill allows for JLSC chairman, members who are appropriately appointed by cabinet. The Court of Appeal and Privy Council have blessed that formula. The Constitution recognizes the structure. There is due process appeal to the High Court and Court of Appeal. Before, it was only from Tax Appeal Board to the Court of Appeal. It has rules of formality, and it's entirely relaxed, as it should be in courts of this type, and this in the round is properly supportable. Thank you.
Senator Small.
Thank you, Madam President. I've listened intently. I've been following this debate all along. I have a view, Madam President, Madam Chair. I think that we come here to do the work of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. A bill came, and I've seen the various, this is probably the third time that the AG's office has amended in response to the concerns. While I don't think that the amendment in front of us prescribes exactly what everyone asks for, I don't expect all the time to get exactly what we ask for. I think that the government has demonstrated that they've moved and they've been responsive to the concerns. They've not held a position and said, well, the policy position of the government is this, and that's the end of the story. That's a phrase that I'm very familiar at hearing. So I think that the amendment here provides for insulation of the chairman. I think that given the examples presented before us of other tribunals operating, it represents a formula that is not alien to Trinidad and Tobago. And given all of those considerations, I think that this what has been presented in terms of this particular clause is something that I would be willing to support. I also want to add, Madam Chair, if you permit me, that I understand the question that has been asked, what is the harm? And I want to ask the flip of that. Is it that what has been proposed is all bad? So that I understand the purpose in asking the question, what is the harm if we have everybody appointed in a particular way? And all I'm saying is, when I look at it, is it that what is in front of us now completely, totally, irrecoverably bad? I don't agree. So I think that it represents a compromise by the Honorable Attorney General in trying to move this forward and responding to the concerns of all of the members here. I think that what we have in front of us is something that is workable. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Shriki Soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm just going to make a comment with respect to the amendment that I would have proposed with respect to this clause, where I propose the use of the President where the president meant the president of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That's the context of my amendment. I've listened to the Honourable Minister, and I really want, as Senator Small, I really want to thank the government for entertaining the discussions and trying to come up with a very feasible solution to appease all, which may be difficult, but at least the majority. However, my concern at this point in time is that the Honourable Minister indicated that there's a lot of work at the Tax Appeal Board, and the purpose of the Valuation Tribunal may facilitate a more efficient way of addressing the objections. And I'm okay with that. I agree with that. The problem I'm having is that the way I see it is our Constitution allows us the right to property and as well as equality of treatment and with respect to property. This particular bill has a significant impact on one's property. And that's why I want to disagree a little bit with the Attorney General, saying that this is limited to, or has a monetary, or even the Minister as a taxation element only, because it has implications with respect to one's property. And therefore, given the implication with one's property, I'm a bit uncomfortable at this point in time where an objection with respect to one's property is at the sole discretion of a political appointee. That's my concern at this point in time.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is that the land and building taxes regime that operated in Trinidad and Tobago for 200 years or 100 years, the Tax Appeal Board was the appeals tribunal. And the Tax Appeal Board, most of the members appointed by the government. So that is our history for 100 years. So this is not something revolutionary. This is the status quo. What we're trying to do is to assist and accommodate some of the concerns that have been raised. But there is due process. The valuation of property, the assessment of property tax is something that has been with us for 200 years. And the adjudication of appeals with respect to valuations of property has been a system whereby you have a tribunal where the chairman is appointed by the president. Well, this is very recent in the 1976 Constitution. Before that, in 1962, all these commissions were appointed by the government, you know. Trinidad has really evolved prior to 62. The premier, the prime ministers, they want to appoint a public service commission, police service commission, etc. You know. So we have evolved, but we can't evolve to a point where we go so far in one direction that we move away from the principles of a democratically elected system. So it is not we are not doing something that is so far a departure from the norm that has been in this country for 200 years.
Senator Shriki Soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a last comment with respect to it. And I understand your position, Honourable Minister, and I accept. It's just that the concern of mine was that when you use the Tax Appeal Board, the ministries is the division that is responsible for producing the valuation. And we're also now saying that the ministry is also responsible for the appointment of members of the tribunal.
The current Tax Appeal Board, chairman is appointed by the president, and the other members of the Tax Appeal Board are appointed by the cabinet, currently. And that has been the norm for 100 years.
Without limit.
Without limit, and that's an important point. We could populate if we wanted to, but we don't.
Right.
We could put 100 cabinet appointees in the Tax Appeal Board and so diminish the influence and authority of the chairman that the chairman will become impotent. We have, Madam President, I don't know why Senator Mark keeps doing this,
Minister.
but we have no intention of doing that. But I'm just saying that's the status quo right now. There is no limit to the number of members of the Tax Appeal Board that can be appointed by the cabinet. In this particular case, we are putting a limit. We are saying only 4. Right now, the cabinet could appoint 40 people to the Tax Appeal Board, and it would be using some of the words of Senator Mark, a far worse situation. So this is an improvement on the status quo.
Senator Ramdeen.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Honourable Minister, I consider you to be somebody who chooses your words very carefully. And you just made reference to the fact that this must be done with due process. And you said that this process guarantees due process.
No, he said that.
I don't know. I've heard it as a member of the Senate over and over again, and I think it's very important for everyone here. I don't know that as a senator that we took an oath to uphold 90% of the law, or 90% of the Constitution, or 90% of, to make everything, the majority of it must be right. It is a submission I've heard over and over. This is a matter of law. We must get it as best as we can, 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
The guarantee, that the distinction that you're making about the fact that this is really about taxation, I want to respectfully disagree. I think Senator Shriki Soon is correct. This is about the deprivation of property that under the Constitution must be done by due process. Due process has been defined as having two components. It must be judicial and it must be due. That is what the Privy Council said in Thomas and Baptiste. That is not what we are doing here. And the arguments, of course, the arguments that you're making, which is that this has been done for 70 years, and this is the way it's done, and that is why we can continue doing it. That is not a proper justification. And the argument that you've buttressed all of this is that we must give the government a certain degree of latitude in doing these things. That too, I find it very difficult to understand. And I'll just give you two examples of why. In Kupa and Balbosa.
Okay, but Senator Ramleen, I think we've gotten the gist of your comments. I don't think we need to go into great detail with the different cases, okay? So
I'd like to briefly respond.
Yes, just 1 second. So you want to just wrap up your point, please?
Well, Madam President, this is a very important matter. I have to be able to say what the position is. And
yes,
I can't do so.
Yes, but you have said so. But I don't think there's a tendency now in the chamber for us to be going into great detail about judgments. So I don't think it is necessary. I think you can summarize the judgments and make your point. Okay?
With respect to the ministerial latitude that you spoke about, this government fell into that same error when you tried to appoint a commissioner of police by letting the minister do certain things pursuant to an order you brought to the parliament that was struck down by the court. If your reasoning is correct, it doesn't mesh. In our jurisdiction, we have a principle of political insulation. That goes against what you are saying about giving the government the power to do all these things because it is the government, because you have been elected. It doesn't operate like that. If that is the position, then we wouldn't need to have a separation of powers. Just let the government run wild.
Madam President.
Madam
President, I must object to the misrepresentation of what we are saying on this side and the misrepresentation of the true facts. The fact of the matter is the current or the status quo at this point in time is that valuations of property can be appealed to the tax appeal board. If a person is not satisfied with the determination made by the tax appeal board, they go to the court. That is the current situation. That is the situation that has existed in Trinidad and Tobago for donkey's years. In our formulation, if a person is aggrieved with an assessment of the value of their property, they would appeal to the valuation tribunal. And if they are not satisfied with the determination by the valuation tribunal, they go to the court. What is the composition of the tax appeal board? It is chairman, vice chairman appointed by the president, everybody else appointed by the executive. What is the composition of this? Chairman appointed by the president, 4 other members recommended by the government.
Tax appeal board, vice chairman.
This is a superior condition to what exists. So it is a misrepresentation to say that this is not due process. A person can appeal currently to the tax appeal board and then they go to the court. In this situation, they appeal to the valuation tribunal and then they go to the court. The tax appeal composition and this composition, very similar. But this one, we have circumscribed it by limiting the number of members the government can appoint to 4. Currently, in the current dispensation, the government can appoint 444 persons to the tax appeal board. So this is a vastly superior system where the influence of the government is far less
than in the current tax appeal situation. And just for the record, to disabuse anyone who's listening of any notion that this will allow political interference, which is what has been implied by Senator Ramdi, I will read the section on page 9, which is 25G2. The minister shall not give directions to the Valuation Tribunal in respect of any particular application or proceeding before the Valuation Tribunal, or direction that would derogate from the duty of the Valuation Tribunal to act judicially. These words are very, very important.
Okay, Minister, I'm going
That's not in the Tax Appeal Board at this point in time.
Senator Ramkisoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just seeking some clarification at this point in relation to the point that was raised by Senator Mahabir in relation to the composition. We got the minister's position, but I did not get it from the Attorney General if it was in agreement that we will be proposing.
No. If the minister has spoken on the issue, there only certain times when the Attorney General will come in.
Okay.
So you've heard the minister's position. I don't think you now need to hear the Attorney General's position.
No, I just wanted to make sure, understand if it was we are accepting the proposal of accepting one of whom has experience in the valuation of the property. That's what I wanted clarification on.
Minister.
I can assist. I personally have no problem, but the Attorney General has raised an issue of a problem of a quorum. Because if you have a meeting of the tribunal and the person with the valuation experience doesn't show up, you can have somebody challenging the decisions of the tribunal. So whereas I, on one hand, say, okay, you'll just have to make sure that the person with the valuation experience shows up. The Attorney General is making the point that is going to create legal difficulties for us. And he's raising the point that there was a problem with the Police Complaints Authority where there was a problem with quorum, and that led to a legal challenge. So it's really a gray area. Right?
Senator Mahabir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And clarification again, I understand the toing and froing with respect to having someone with the experience on the tribunal. But Minister, you did compromise and indicated that there shall be two persons who shall have experience. I don't see the issue of a quorum arising. But the concern I have, Honorable Minister, is this. At any meeting of the Valuation Tribunal, a quorum is constituted if at least 3 members are present. Is it that the chairman has to be in the meeting for the quorum to be properly constituted? Or is it any 3 members, and when they appear, one of them can say, well, I elect you as chairman and we will administer, because you said that the tribunal can regulate its own affairs. So I'm wondering a clarification.
The tribunal is not the chairman. Where is it desirable that you would want the chairman to be there? Because that is the person who must have the 10 years experience. There are other forums, the industrial court and so on, where that is not a requirement. It's not a requirement.
But Honourable Minister.
And the Tax Appeal Board itself.
Right. But through you, Madam President, Honourable Minister, it is quite likely then we will get 3 persons. The chairman is not present. One of them will be nominated as chairman, and it will defeat, you see, the separation that we are talking about, because the guarantee we have is that if the chairman is appointed by the JLSC and he is present to administer the affairs of the tribunal all the time, at least there is one member who is immune from political influences. But as it is now, what 15.4 is reading is 3 of the members, 4 of whom are appointed by the cabinet, 3 of them can then run this tribunal. And I am having some concern.
Minister, before an Attorney General, Senator Hussain, you wanted to make a different point or ask for clarification?
Hear the Minister on the issue that I initially raised with respect to the remuneration of the members of the tribunal.
Yes, Minister.
Today we took a decision to put the Sentencing Commission under the purview of the Salary Review Commission. That's how it's.
Is it all members, Minister?
Yes.
So
we would put this under the Salary Review Commission. So again, that gives it that there's some independence there as well. The politicians would not be deciding the compensation package for the members of this tribunal.
And once this formula of words is used exactly as the Tax Appeal Board, that is exactly how it is done.
That's what would be done.
Would the chairman's salary come out of the consolidated fund?
Everything will come out of the consolidated.
There are charges on the consolidated fund under law.
Senator Ramney, you wanted to raise something. Yes.
Minister, you made
I just want to point out, members, that at some stage I will have to bring the deliberations on the proposed amendment to an end. At some point I will decide that there has been enough discussions on the clauses. Senator Ramdeen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable Minister, you made reference to this section that says the minister shall not give directions, and I'm sorry that you were not here on the last occasion, but I made a submission with respect to that on the last occasion, which is that this is the first time that I, in my very limited experience in public law, has seen a section that prohibits a minister from acting unlawfully. It is ridiculous. With the greatest of respect. Sorry, with the, Minister, I don't assume that you are going to ever act unlawfully. The whole basis of public law is that a minister exercises their powers lawfully. So if it is we are going to subscribe, right, that you are not going to give any direction to the tribunal, why don't we just put the whole gamut in? Let's put all the grounds for judicial review, that you wouldn't act unreasonably, in conflict with law, and all these things. This is if without this section that you have here, what protection is this going to give to anyone? If you act unlawfully, you'll be judicially reviewed anyway.
Minister.
I think this is to protect the country from another minister.
Another minister?
Yeah.
Okay.
Senator Richards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we dealing with all the amendments as suggested by the government?
We are dealing with the, yes, clause 15, just clause 15.
Or just clause 15, okay,
yes.
Thanks. I haven't understood clause 34, sorry.
No, just clause 15. Senator Mark, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Madam President, Madam Chair, you know, a true Democrat never has a problem with allowing the sunshine of transparency, accountability, checks and balances to enter, you know, the environment that we are in, or into their homes, or into the Parliament. Madam, I hear my colleague keep saying about the duplication, almost a replica of what has happened at the Tax Appeal Board. The Tax Appeal Board is a superior court of record. I think we need to know that. And even though you could appoint 30 and 40 people, the other thing I want to ask, Madam Chair, because we want to ensure the insulation of these individuals, would the minister be prepared to allow the chairman and the other members' salaries to become a direct charge on the public purse? No. No. That is not in the amendments. So to answer it is one thing, Madam Chair. To have it in the law is another thing. So I'm asking again to insulate these people, make them more independent of the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance or any future minister. Would the minister be prepared, Madam Chair, to look at this whole question of a direct charge of the emoluments on the public? That is what I'd like to ask.
Madam President, as far as I know, the salary of judges is a direct charge. I believe the President's salary is a direct charge. My salary is not. And there are many other tribunals, commissions, and agencies and departments that the Tax Appeal Board, for example, the salaries of the members of that board are not a direct charge. I would not want to agree to that without very careful consideration. So I am sorry, I cannot agree to that at this time.
But you know, the chairman and the vice chairman of the Tax Appeal Board, their salaries and emoluments are direct charges.
Oh, really? Where's that?
It is in the law. It's there.
If you can show it to me, I have no problem.
Yeah, Madam, let them continue. I'll show it to them. I'll get it and pass it on to them.
Section 4 is not there.
It's there.
Senator Shriki, just some housekeeping. Are you pursuing your...
Madam Chair, I still remain a little bit uncomfortable, but in the interest of the work before us, and I will support the, I will withdraw it.
So Senator Shriki amendment is withdrawn. I need to just, we therefore still have Senator Marks and Senator Ramkisoon introduced an amendment to clause 15, which deals with subsequent parts of clause 15.
Yeah, it is section 5, Honorable Minister, section 5.
Madam Chairman, may I just make an inquiry? I thought we had gone through Senator Ramkisoon's proposed amendment on the last occasion.
Yes, and I think there was a further amendment to her amendment, which I've recorded. I just want, before we start dealing with all the amendments, to ask her to just run through it one more time.
Yes.
So the Minister is here, so that we can just formalize everything before we start putting the sections to vote.
Certainly. Thank you.
Minister, yes?
In the case of the chairman of the Tax Appeal Board, that person is equated to a judge of the High Court, and that is why decisions of the Tax Appeal Board are appealed to the Court of Appeal. This tribunal is of a lower level, and decisions of this tribunal will be appealed to the High Court. So you cannot equate the chairman of this tribunal to a judge and make their emoluments a charge on the consolidated fund. That is why I need to look at your proposal very carefully, because it's not as simple as it appears on the surface. These things are not the same. We are creating a dispute resolution tribunal which is appealable to the High Court. It is not a court of superior record that goes to the Court of Appeal. It's not the same thing. It's at a slightly lower level.
Madam Chair, could the Honourable Minister indicate whether the government has made an estimation of what it will cost to establish this new tribunal and to populate it?
No, we have not, but we consider it so important that whatever reasonable costs are required, we will undertake to bear them.
But don't you think it might have been more feasible to expand the Tax Appeal Board?
No, because then it's just like the magistrate's court with a ticket offense, a traffic offense. If you have ever been to the magistrate court, Senator Mark, you would see the number of matters that are adjourned. Magistrates spend most of the time adjourning multiple matters before they get to weighty matters. If you throw this into the Tax Appeal Board in the milieu, in the mass of appeals inside of there, it gets lost inside of there. And this is why and yes, there are weighty appeals before the Tax Appeal Court in the hundreds of millions of dollars and so on that consume the intellectual capacity of that court and its resources. So we do not think it's a good idea to continue to burden the Tax Appeal Board with these matters. That's why we're creating this tribunal.
Senator Ramkisoon, on the last occasion, there is an amendment circulated on your behalf, which was further amended, which you sought leave to further amend. At that time, the minister had indicated that she was not minded to accede to that recommendation. Are you pursuing your amendment? Would you?
So the minister accepted it after it was further amended. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that.
Okay, so
are you pursuing your amendment?
Yes, Madam President, because I was of the understanding that she did accept the further amended clause, because it went on to add the section B, which is 25D and 25D. So it was accepted, and it was further amended and accepted.
Sure. Honourable Minister, there is a proposed amendment by Senator Ramkisoon to clause 15. I would ask you to respond to it. You can get a copy, but let me just read it to you. in the proposed section 25A, insert the following new subsection after subsection 4. Where the term of office of a member has expired, he may, with the permission of the President, acting on the advice of the chairperson, continue in office for such a period of time after the expiry of his term as may be necessary to do anything in relation to the completion of proceedings that were commenced before the tribunal before his term of office expired. Senator Ramkissoon, can you just put forward the basis of your proposed amendment?
It was to allow continuation of members who would have had reviewed a case, and because we're allowing members to only serve staggered 3 years, if their case has started, they would be allowed to continue until that case has been closed. It also exists in our present-day legislation in Trinidad and Tobago for an existing tribunal that we have.
Which one is that?
As the Equal Opportunities Tribunal, and it's there enshrined in the legislation.
I don't know. I mean, in the judicial system, in fact, this is something that has been ventilated recently, the question of continuation or resuming matters. This is a matter of great public importance. Again, it's a very novel proposal, but I wouldn't want to just do it on the fly, just like that. I understand where you're coming from.
Honorable Minister, the exact wording from the Equal Opportunities Act, which was assented to in 2010 or 2000, what the first page says? Where's your assented to? I believe it was 2010 or 2000. It was assented to, I think it's 2000. But anyways, the direct words from that act were notwithstanding that a member term of office has expired, comma, with the permission of the President acting on the advice of the chairperson, comma, continue in office for such a period after the expiry of his term as may be necessary to do anything in relation to the completion of proceedings that were commenced before the tribunal before his term of office expired. And the minister in the Ministry of Finance further amended that, and that is what the Madam Chair read out to you, where by changing the first line where it says where the term of the office of a member has expired and he may. So I didn't think it was a fly-by-night a proposal to accept.
The little difficulty I'm having is that then you would have more than 5 people in the tribunal, and this is a problem that is faced by the judiciary right now. And I mean, when judges approaching retirement age, they are required to complete the matters that are before them, and one would expect that a member of this tribunal as well would not take on any new matters, you know, at some period in time before the expiry of their term, like 6 months before, something like that. I think I understand what the Honourable Senator is proposing, but I think it complicates the issue, because then we'll have to have some amendments of some other clauses, because the tribunal is 5. So that if you have somebody whose term has expired but they're dealing with something, then you'll have 6. You may have 7. You could have 10, because all of the members could be involved in matters. So
so now you're raising...
I would like some more time. I give an undertaking. I would like some more time to look at this, and I give a firm undertaking that if we can find a form of words to deal with this problem, I'll return to the Senate, the Parliament, with an appropriate amendment. But I wouldn't want, I just see this may create more problems than it solves. That's just how I see it.
Okay, my one question is, before it was 3 members, and in the provisions it was that it would be staggered. So now that we have 5 members, these 5 members would also be staggered. Is that so?
No, they're all having the
3 years
same, 3 years.
Same start date, same end date.
Yeah. And again, if you stagger people, that will automatically create the, Senator Ramkissoon, if we did that, if we staggered them, that will create the problem that you're trying to solve. Because some people would go out while some people are still there.
And that's why...
And then you'll have part-heard matters I think really this thing has to be managed by the chairman and by the tribunal itself, that they don't engage in deliberations on new matters, you know, close to the expiry of the term. I mean, as I said, the judiciary faces that exact problem. And that is one of the big matters engaging the attention of the courts right now. I don't want to talk about it too much. I don't want to express an opinion, because I might be out of order if I do that. But I'm just saying, yes, it's a matter that is engaging the highest courts at this point in time. What do you do when a person has not completed hearing matters and their appointment comes to an end? What happens? Does somebody else continue, or do you have to start all over from the beginning? So I would not want to do this just so. I need to be advised. I need to get senior counsel advice, and then I will come back to, I give an undertaking, I will come back if I can find a formulation.
Madam Chair, just one more thing. Thank you for that undertaking. I do have a concern because during the debate, you were not here at the last occasion, unfortunately, and it did come up about the time period, the 3 years. Now that we have these 5 persons serving at 3 years, are we looking to extend that 3 years now to 5 years?
I think 3 is appropriate. I think so.
So, honourable senators, at this stage, I am now going to ask for everyone to pay some attention. Senator Ramkisoon.
Madam President, Madam Chair, so is Part B also not accepted? So because it was amended that in proposed section 25F, I had F, but the minister had asked that it be 25D.
Minister, with respect to the second part of Senator Ramkisoon's amendment.
The other thing with that is that is grounds for removal of a member. Because if you look at the parent, the Tax Appeal Board, and if you look at this as well, that the minister may suspend a member of the tribunal from office on the ground of misbehavior or physical or mental incapacity. So if somebody cannot perform their functions, that's a ground to remove them. So I don't think it's necessary. That's the point I'm making.
So ill means physical.
Yeah,
or
physical.
Mental,
if you're yes, if you're ill to the point that you can't function, that is a physical incapacity. Yes.
As a senator, we are also ill.
That is so. That is so.
All right.
Okay.
Honourable senators, we will deal first with the amendment as circulated by Senator Mark. Honourable senators, the question is that clause 15 be amended as circulated by Senator Mark. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no.
No.
The noes have it. The amendment as circulated by Senator Mark is not accepted. Senator Ramkisoon, are you pursuing your amendment?
Yes.
You want to vote on it?
Yes.
Honourable senators, the question is that clause 15 be amended as circulated by Senator Ramkisoon and further amended to read as follows. 15A, sub 5, where the term of office of a member has expired, he may, with the permission of the President, acting on the advice of the chairperson, continue in office for such a period after the expiry of his term as may be necessary to do anything in relation to the completion of proceedings that were commenced before the tribunal before his term of office expired. B, in the proposed section 25D, insert after the word 25D the word 1 in brackets and insert the following new subsection. Am I reading that correctly, Senator Ramkisoon? Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The noes have it. The amendment as circulated by Senator Ramkisoon has not been accepted. the ministers. Honourable Senators, the question is that Clause 15 be amended as circulated by the Minister of Finance. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no.
No. You want a division on that.
Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Mrs. Gopi Schoon?
Yes.
Mrs. Batiste Primus?
Yes.
Mr. Rambrad?
Yes.
Mr. Sinanan?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Kazim Hussein?
Yes.
Mr. Lehunt?
Yes.
Dr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Cummins?
Yes.
Mr. De Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Duki? Yes. Mr. Huggins?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Mark?
No.
Ms. Haynes?
No.
Ms. Amin?
No.
Mr. Saddam Hussein?
No.
Mr. Obika?
No.
Mr. Ramdeen? Dr. Mahabir?
Abstain.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Shrikisoon?
Abstain.
Ms. Ramkisoon?
Yes.
Ms. Choate?
Yes.
Mr. Crease? Ms. Raful?
Abstain.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Six against and 3 abstains. Honourable Senators, the result of the division is as follows. 20 members voted for the amendment, 6 members voted against, and 3 members abstained. The amendment to Clause 15 has therefore been accepted. The question, therefore, is, Honourable Senators, that Clause 15, as amended, now stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 15, as amended, now stands part of the bill.
New Clause 15.
Honourable Senators, the question is that new Clause 15 be read a second time. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. New Clause 15 will now be read a second time.
New Clause 15.
Senator Shrikisoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Honourable Minister. The thinking behind this amendment is just to say that the legislation before us, or the bill before us, provided for improvements. But given that given that the valuation is being done on property and equipment more so, I'm asking for consideration be given to if an asset, property or equipment, or even a building becomes impaired, and significantly so where it affects the valuation of the property.
Valuation is distinct from the taxation.
Yes.
That is a very important matter, but we have to think about that very carefully. A lot of business owners have indicated that they have property that they can't rent, for example, but they'll be called upon to pay the tax. So a lot of representation has been made with respect to that issue as to whether the tax should be collected from an impaired asset. It's something we have to think about very, very carefully. I have been listening to what people have been saying, and we have not yet reached a decision on how we will treat that kind of impaired asset. But how does that relate to this bill?
Through you, Madam Chair, it was in the context of should the asset become impaired and the owner of the asset is of the view it's impaired, then to give him an opportunity to inform the Commissioner of Valuations of the impairment under the conditions that the impairment is quite significant and it's not a short-term impairment, and to provide the evidence for such.
But you see, does that affect the value? The value of the asset stands alone. Property has a value.
And they're done in cycles.
But the taxation, you see, in the case of indigent persons or persons who are financially challenged, we have a provision in the other legislation where the person can apply for a waiver of the tax and they have to prove their case, that they can't afford it. That issue, as far as I'm concerned, is more properly dealt with under the Property Tax Act rather than the valuation, because I think you're getting into very complicated territory if you try to value property based on considerations as to whether the business is a going concern. In land acquisition, for example, there's been a lot of argument, but it has always come down on one side, that when you're acquiring property, you deal with its pure value rather than the value to a person or the economic loss that they might suffer because they had a business on the property and the business was earning income. It's a very complicated area of law. So that in terms of valuations, I think we better keep the valuation pure. But in terms of taxation or the imposition or collection of taxation, that is somewhere where consideration could be given to the point that you are raising.
Two points. 2 points, Madam Chair. Number one, the valuations are cyclical. You can go up or down, and you have a process of intervening. And number two, if you start to introduce impairment, what about recompensatory value, for instance, application of insurance or loss or other factors? Then you start getting into all sorts of complications as to the true validity of impairment and compensation, which may be external to the environment but not declared. So I agree with the Minister that it's something to be considered very carefully, but more so on the property tax end of it from the springboard basis.
I think it's better to leave the valuation alone, but give...
Yeah,
I think it's better to, it's on?
Yeah,
yeah.
No.
It's better to leave the valuations alone and not complicate it with considerations of economic loss and deal with the taxation component in terms of collection of the tax. Someone can make a case that their asset is impaired and make a case for a waiver or reduction in the tax. I think it's better to do it that way. Better to consider it that way.
Okay. I thank you, Minister, and I accept it.
Because that's how land acquisition is done. That's the learning in land acquisition. Okay, it's the pure value of the property that you look at.
So you're withdrawing? All right, so Senator Shriki Soon has withdrawn his proposed amendment.
New clause 18. New clause 18A.
Minister.
Oh, this is in the list of amendments. Oh, I'm sorry. This clause is required to preserve the confidentiality of information that a property owner might submit to the board, the commission.
All right. Honourable Senators, the question is that new clause 18A be read a second time. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. New clause 18A will now be read a second time.
New clause 18A, confidentiality.
Senator Mark.
Madam Chair, through you to the Minister. Do you think that this $5,000 is adequate?
You want to raise it?
No, I'm asking you because we're talking about confidentiality
Madam
in terms
Chair,
of information.
I'm trying to accommodate.
No, I'm just asking
yes,
you.
If you want, we can raise it. So
because
suggest a figure.
I think it is something that,
Well, suggest a figure.
No, I'm just throwing it out for member's consideration.
I don't have a figure. My figure is 5,000.
Senator Choate.
You come with yours.
Well, then, may I respectfully suggest a figure?
Sure.
25,000 instead.
I'll go with Senator Choate's recommendation.
Senator Richards.
My thoughts were also on the same, and then a question to the Honourable Minister through you, Madam Chair. When in the clause, the Commissioner, or any person duly authorised by him, is it envisioned by the Minister that this also covers the persons on the tribunal? Or is it?
No, this was the Commissioner of Valuation.
And his?
Because remember, the confidential information is submitted first to the Commissioner of Valuations. Yes, the tribunal will have access to the information.
But shouldn't it cover them also?
You see, that's a part. I think that might even be public information. If you have a matter before a tribunal, unless it's sealed, I think that would be in the public domain, actually.
Okay, understood. And I also agree with Senator Mark and Senator Choate that given the value of properties being evaluated here, I think $5,000 is not, we might sound draconian, but not even punitive enough to dissuade people from...
Senator Choate recommended 25,000.
I agree with that.
Would you
Yes.
think you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but Madam Chair, could I come in here? Sure.
Senator Mahabir.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the Minister, as she piloted on the last day, indicated that the magistrate has some flexibility with respect to a person who fails willfully to file the information form that is required, but the maximum is 5,000. It appears
this is confidentiality. We're dealing with confidentiality.
Right, I know, and I'm linking it now to 18A. It has to be, we are simply pulling figures out, 5 and 25 and 50. I don't know if maybe the AG can help us whether there are other laws in Trinidad and Tobago in which there is a confidentiality clause and that there's a penalty associated with it.
The reference is the Perjury Act, and it's $15,000 if I recall, but there have been some amendments to it. So usually the breaches of oaths of secrecy, etc., is by way of reference to perjury, and then you take it from there. So we're not far off. Again, there is no true matrix in how offences come up. It's usually Parliament in its consideration and the signal it wishes to send.
And the reason why I didn't ask the Honourable Senator to explain, Senator Choate is an experienced senior counsel.
Thank you very much.
But this is within the range.
Right. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. It's just that a perjury can refer to anyone, but this is where an officer of the state has information and he has violated the confidentiality clause. And I think the penalty really should be around much more than a perjury. But if the House is of the view that 25 is adequate, I will support that.
I would stay with 25 for now.
Remember,
it's something
summary.
we can always review.
Yeah.
This is a summary offence. This is not an indictable offence.
Up to the magistrate that she can, he or she can go up to 25.
That would apply with anything.
Right.
So
very
any
well.
number you
So
put there, that argument applies. So it's not really applicable.
Okay.
When you say that there's a maximum sentence, it applies to anything. I could put 10, 1,000, 1,000,000, that argument applies to that.
Senator Ramdeen, you wanted to read.
Could I just, if we're going to create the offence, shouldn't we treat like with like, so that if you have an offence, the AG has referred to perjury, but whilst the Data Protection Act is not enforced in terms of the offences provisions, can we not look at that with like, because that is an act that protects information and the confidentiality of information, and perhaps we can synchronize what we are doing here with what we pass there, and be able to come to some kind of agreement. I don't think it is useful for us to have different penalties for similar offences. So just a suggestion that you may wish to take into consideration by looking at what the provisions are there, because I think they're quite higher. I think, AG, to be respectfully, I think perjury is a different category.
Understood. Something along the lines of Section 38 of the Data Protection Act around there?
And I think it's quite, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's summary there as well.
Yeah.
We could take 2 minutes and look at that, if you want. I have it here. So Section 38, you say?
Section 38 is the public disclosure.
Yeah, so you could take a look and see.
You might look for offences otherwise. I'll try to pull it up here.
to 94, 95. Yeah.
Yeah, or look for oath. In the Data Protection Act, what I'm seeing is that the offense of disclosure falls under the general penalty within the Act. There's no number.
Is that 94,
yeah,
95?
there's no number.
It'll be down at the end.
Yeah, so it falls within the general.
Yeah, but there's penalties prescribed later on.
Yeah, that's what
Section
I'm saying.
95.
But within the section with respect to disclosure, there's no penalty. So it would
look at
be
95.
it would just be the penalty for a breach.
Right, which is
95.
50.
95.
50,000.
That's what I'm saying.
50,000. Summary.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If it's indictable, it's 100, and if it's summary, it's 50. I have no problem with
I'm
50.
just saying, like, it's up to you.
Senator Ramdeen, you have pushed an open door. You come inside. So 50,000. Not prepare to open the door.
So members, how about I push this door now and put the question. So 50. No. The question is that new clause 18A, as further amended, to read at sub 2, a person who contravenes subsection 1 commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $50,000 be added to the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. New clause 18A, as amended, now stands part of the bill. Senator Mark, may I just point out that on the list of amendments circulated by you, there is a new clause 21 listed in the column, but nothing to set out what that is about.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I understand, but what the intention was, and it's not replicated here as you rightly stated, I was trying to get the government, Minister of Finance, I had a deletion, a new clause rather, but the actual wording of it was not manifested because I was trying to get some help.
Yeah, it's on. When you look at the section of the Act that this is intended to apply to, the Parent Act, it is a fee that the Commissioner of Valuations would charge.
Here's a new clause 21. He's proposing a form.
What about 16? You're not bothering with 16 anymore? I thought we are on 16.
Minister,
Uh-huh.
we had cleared up all of those. We only had to deal with clause 15 and new clause 15. What I'm pointing out is that
he hasn't explained.
what I'm pointing out is that Senator Mark circulated in his list of amendments a new clause 21, but there is nothing listed as
he didn't put any words.
Yes, but I was just indicating to the chairman through your good self, the thinking. There's no written proposal.
I can't even object because there's nothing there.
Just one second. I can't even call it.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving you an opportunity, Senator Mark. Can we just take this as being a typographical error and move on?
It's blank.
Well, it's blank, but it's
no,
not
we don't. Come on,
I think it was just a question of the assistance and the seeking. I didn't get it manifested in terms of the actual draft.
So that I can now move to resume the Senate?
Well, you can.
Well, Senator Mark, no. You need
he has no proposal, Madam President. He does not have a proposal before
I really
you.
am.
I agree with you.
Yeah. He doesn't have a proposal
But anyway,
before you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so Senator Mark has, so there is no new clause 21. So, Honourable Senators, the question is that the bill as amended be now reported to the Senate. So those in favour say aye. Those against say no. I believe the ayes have it. The bill as amended will now be reported to the Senate. Mrs. Caesar. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to report that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Valuation of Land Act, Chapter 5803, was considered in Committee of the Whole and approved with amendments. I now beg to move that the Senate agree with the committee's report.
Honourable Senators, the question is that this Senate agree with the committee's report on a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Valuation of Land Act, Chapter 5803. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no.
No.
I think the ayes have it. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Valuation of Land Act, Chapter 5803, be forthwith read a third time and passed.
Honourable Senators, the question is a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Valuation of Land Act, Chapter 5803, be now read a third time and passed. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no.
No. Division.
Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Mrs. Gopi Schoon?
Yes.
Mrs. Batiste Primus?
Yes.
Mr. Rambara?
Yes.
Mr. Sinanan?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Hussain?
Yes.
Mr. Lehant?
Yes.
Dr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. De Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Dookie?
Yes.
Mr. Huggins?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Ma?
No.
Ms. Haynes?
No.
Ms. Amin?
No.
Mr. Hussain?
No.
Mr. Obika?
No.
Mr. Ramdeen?
No.
Dr. Mahabir?
Yes.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Sri Kisoon?
Yes.
Ms. Ram Kisoon?
Yes.
Ms. Chot?
Yes.
Mr. Kreese?
Yes.
Ms. Raful?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Madam President, the result of the division is 24 voted in favor of the bill, 6 against, and no one abstained.
Honourable Senators, 24 members voted for the bill and 6 members voted against. No one abstained. The bill has therefore been passed.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Valuation of Land Act, Chapter 5803.
Honourable Senators, at this stage, I would suggest that we suspend and we will return at 5:15 p.m.